Jody, please go on. Yeah.
Okay, so what is the scope of this proposal? What happens today is that mergers, acquisitions, and all this kind of business operations don't have today an AFRINIC policy, okay? In most of the registries, not all of them, actually only AFRINIC and Drive, this is governed by processes.
Chair, could you double check if the mic is on?
I think this is wrong, because that basically means that the community has no control on those kinds of transfers, because at the end it's a kind of transfer. It's true that it's a transfer because there is an operation between two companies, okay? But we need to decide within the community scope, and that's the PDP, if we want to allow that or not. That's what I am proposing here. So there is not any section in the actual policy manual about that. So I don't have, like in previous presentations, 2 columns. It's just the text that I am proposing. And the idea is that AFRINIC will process those transfers for mergers and acquisitions. Never mind, we are talking about ISPs or enterprises, because that happens all the time. And what we are telling AFRINIC is to look for some documents that prove that, okay? So I am just using 3 examples of documents that in the actual procedure.
We are having feedback. We are having feedback. Is there any?
Decision is a different case, and in different countries.
We are having feedback. Is there any mic on?
Decide which documents to request. Okay, but the one is.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
And this is the very important difference here. I am only acknowledging intra-RIR mergers and acquisitions. Why? Because as we have seen in the previous presentation, there is a lot of discussion and there is not an agreement yet in the community if we should allow transfers from other or among other regions, okay? So everybody accepts internal transfers, that's clear, because we have already a policy for that. But not everybody is accepting that, for example, a company from Netherlands buy a company from Africa and bring the resources to Netherlands. So at the moment, we can discuss it later, maybe in 1 year or 2 years after now. We will decide if the community changes his mind. At the moment, I am only recognizing these transfers within the scope of the region. And that's it. I put some references. In this proposal, I am allowing transfers for merger and acquisitions for both IPv4, IPv6, and ASNs. In LACNIC, we have a discussion in the community. Initially, I had a proposal for the 3 types of resources as well. Some people was opposing to IPv6. Some people was in favor of only allowing IPv4 or ASNs. So finally, in LACNIC, I presented 3 different proposals, 1 for each type of resource. Fortunately, all the 3 proposals reached consensus already a couple of weeks ago. So it's exactly the same situation as what I am proposing here. So again, just to make it short, what I am proposing is mergers and acquisitions become part of the PDP, so they fall in the control of the community, not just the decision of the staff. And we only allow at the moment, we can change it later, mergers and acquisitions within the region for both IPv4, IPv6, and ASN. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jordi. On to the impact assessment. This. Okay. So our understanding of the proposal, A new section in the CPM used, and it shall accommodate any transfer-related policies in a single place. All types of resources can be transferred, IPv4, IPv6, and AS numbers. The recipient organization still has to justify the needs for the resources and comply with all existing policies. If required, for example, if the recipient is not a member already or has an old RSA, I think, yeah, the new RSA may need to be signed by the resulting company or companies. That's to comply with AFRINIC business rules as well. The policy proposes, leaving the required supporting documentation up to be determined by staff, okay? And we do have the guidelines that has documented the needs. Is it the intent to still allow AFRINIC staff to use the guidelines, at least in regard to the documentation? Okay, that's fine. And the statement, resource transfers due to mergers, acquisitions, reorganizations, or relocations. Can the author clarify what is meant by relocation, preferably with an example? Okay, I'll finish and then you can take over. And transfers, okay, so some information about those resulting to M&As must also be published. Right now, the publication of transfers, whether it's M&A or policy transfer, happen automatically. Once they're executed, we update our transfer logs and we check the syntax of the transfer log. So we have M&A and we have policy transfers. If you have different types of mergers, acquisitions, reorganizations, or relocations, are you intending AFRINIC to publish the nitty-gritty, or like, is it a merger? Is it an acquisition? Is it a reorganization or relocation? Or it can simply be published as a merger and acquisition in the transfer log? M&A is fine. All right, thank you. And yeah, because if you had said otherwise, then we would have had to trigger a deeper impact analysis to check, at least to ensure that they are replicated in the transfer logs as the policy would state. And yeah, okay, right, sorry, I think there's, yeah, so still, there was an input on the RPD list as well. We've put it in the SAS because we didn't know whether you will already take it into consideration, take that input into consideration. Okay, so some of the information to be published would have the implicated org names, resulting resources transferred, and type of M&A. All right, so if the type of M&A has to be detailed, all right, then we need to provide, to investigate further so that how we can implement that. Yep, basically that's it. Okay, now for the policy implementation timeline, it can be done within the PDP timelines because we are already doing M&As. And there has been an element of automation as well. So switching from a guideline to a policy, that is doable as long as the policy doesn't entail a rework of the rules. Okay, thank you.
Basically, you said it. I am not trying to change the way you do today. I am just trying to get the community controlling this. And The only possible change, which I am not even sure it happened before, maybe you Matvi can confirm, is have you ever had a case of an M&A, which a company from another region, or usually it's always inside Africa? Because that defines the thing.
So far, the M&As we have processed, or even like perhaps I say not processed, not been able to process, were acquisitions being done within the region. Okay, and in any case, if it's an M&A outside the region, that the recipient is outside the AFRINIC service region, if it happens now, we'll say there's a lack of policy to allow inter-RIR transfer of the resources from AFRINIC to another region for the purpose of a merger and acquisition, it will be denied. Okay. So yeah, the relocation here is what? Within the region or outside?
No. Okay. First, you said precisely what I wanted to hear, that right now, if an inter-RIR comes to AFRINIC table, you will not be able to take a decision because your internal procedure don't state it. So with the policy, we are stating it clearly. And then the community can decide in another round or in 1 year or 2 years from now if they want to allow it, because now we don't have consensus on that, and we don't have consensus for any of the 3 types of resources. Now, relocation. I know that everybody reads perfectly M&A for all the cases, but I wanted to make it a more complete coverage of all the possibilities. I want to state that if a company moves from one country to another, it's possible as well. That's a relocation or a reorganization or a partial M&A, because all these cases happen. I am not changing the concept of what you are doing today and what are you understanding with your guidelines, but I am just trying to be more clear that it covers all the possible cases. Anything related to business between companies in terms of mergers and acquisitions, whatever you call, it's within this. That's the idea of talking that. And I use specifically relocation because I am thinking, maybe I am wrong, that in the future, the community can change his mind and allow inter-RIR and A. So then our policy will be done. What we will do? Remove inter-RIR and we are done for all the cases. Okay, so it will be a very simple change when and if the community agree on that. That's the thing.
Thank you for the clarification. But this policy is for M&As within the AFRINIC service region. So the resources can migrate, for example, from an organization in South Africa to an organization in Kenya, because the org in Kenya acquired the organization. There has been a merger or an acquisition of the organization in South Africa, and the resources are to be put there. Okay, intra-RIR. It's intra-RIR M&A. Okay, right. Thank you. Intra, yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to put in the screen the slide again, but it was the wrong slide set. Okay, right now. Let's see. Yeah. So already ready for questions, if any question.
We'll take comments. I'll take 5 comments. Just 5, please.
So this is the important thing. I am restricting it to intra-RIR at the moment. And
sorry, we have 5 people already at the mic. If we have more time, we're going to take more comments.
Hello? Can I start?
Please.
Okay. Daniel from Nigeria.
Please, you have 1 minute. I'm going to have a timer here, and I'm going to show you so that you see. Please, just state your most important points.
We have our beautiful ladies that are moderating. Please help us
well, for me, it's
regulate.
That since we're not talking of inter-RRI, now this one also will have to hold until we get that sorted, so that it will only make sense if we have RRI transfers, then this will make sense. However, I see merger and acquisition, even if I'm coming from outside the AFRINIC region and I'm buying a company in Africa, do I have to get the resources of that company out since I want to run the company within Africa? So it doesn't make sense that I need to take the resources.
As I understand, all the justification for getting resources is that you justify that you are offering the service here. So if you come from outside Africa and you provide services here, it's fine. Is that right?
So that the current M&A guideline serves. So I think we should stick to what we have for now. Thank you. So I'm not supporting the proposal for now.
The mic at the back, please.
Thank you, Chair. I have some challenges with this policy. I think even the title is problematic for me. If we are discussing mergers and acquisitions, we'll discuss that. But suggesting there's a transfer occurring when mergers occur actually gives me the feeling that your intention is transfer. And I'm not sure that's what we want to do. If there's mergers and acquisition, you handle it as mergers and acquisition. If there's transfer, you handle it as transfer. So in essence, I'm questioning the problem statement as mixing the two things. And I'm surprised that staff procedure was mentioned as not optimal without giving further reasons why it's not optimal. As far as I'm concerned, this is an administrative issue, and it may require compliance with certain laws, including laws of Mauritius. And so by going with this policy, you are disempowering the organization AFRINIC. I would like AFRINIC to handle these themselves. And if you have good inputs, then give the inputs for staff to create new guidelines, go for public comment, and so on. So I am hesitant about this policy, especially since it's impugning transfer when the objective is mergers and acquisition. Thank you.
The question here is that when you do a merger and acquisition, you are actually transferring the resources to the new resulting organization. You can call it transfer, you can call it change on the registration details, you can call it whatever you want, but it's a transfer in the sense that the receiving organization is not the original one.
Sorry, Jody, what we're going to do is I've given you pen and paper to just note it. You're going to respond at the end of, yeah, sorry, please. Like in front.
Okay, this is Pascal from Federal University. Jody,
Okay.
Matt V said there is already a process and there is already automation. For me, this proposal tries to bring two things that already exist and it's ambiguous. For example, there is already intra-RIR for me, and talking about resources. For what you are saying here, you are also talking about transferring of resources. And for me, I think we should stick with the guidelines that Madvi said already exist, because you are complicating, like bringing transferring of resources and separate business entity acquisition. So for me, I think these two stuffs conflict. And till we pass the inter-RIR, if we are told it will be passed, I think this policy should be shelved for now because it would make no sense actually. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll move to the mic at the back. And that's the third, the fourth, the fifth. So,
hello, Luca from Nigeria. I quite align my position with that of Prof. Given the fact that we have M&A already, there is a guideline on that, and I believe this does not in any way prove that there is any value addition. On that note, I think we should continue with the M&A. If there is any need for an improvement you feel in the guideline, you can contact the AFRINIC. And then again, there is also an intra-IRR on ground, a policy on ground already. So bringing the two together, trying to caption them as a single distinct, it's not so good. So I believe it should be stepped down. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm Norman from Uganda. I see an issue of redundancy here. Since we already have the current procedures already that are defined by AFRINIC staff, and Jody also acknowledged that the powers will still remain with AFRINIC staff in regards to acquisition. So I see an issue of redundancy. We don't need another, because nothing would change. It's like we're just going around. Yeah, thank you.
Sorry, please, I want to find out, is there any other person in this room that has something entirely different from what has been raised? Or do we have remote participation that has something entirely different from what has been raised?
J'ai une remarque rapide, vraiment rapide.
Regarding to what was mentioned, this proposal contradicts on what is being dealing with the allocation of transference. So we are in a policy that do exist, and it will not achieve what we are defending, which is simplifying the procedures and to be less complex.
I have 1 minute to respond.
Okay. I am just going to repeat what I have said before. First, when you execute an M&A, the result is that you actually transfer the resources. You can call it whatever you want, but the new organization is getting registered with the resources from the previous ones. So that's the reason I put the word transfers in the title, to make it clear, even if everybody may not agree, this is what it means an M&A. Now, the actual procedure is developed by staff, not by the community. And I am of the opinion that the community must have the control of anything related to resources, okay? Otherwise, let the staff do the policies on our behalf. That's simple. I am not making a more complex process. We agreed with the staff that we are not actually changing anything, but if tomorrow we want to change it, we can just update the policy, okay? And finally, the staff recognized it, if I got correctly when discussing with Matvi a few minutes ago, that if today there is a request for a merger and acquisition involving two registries, they don't have rules for that. So they could deny it, but the company that is doing the merger and acquisition could go to court to say, hey, I have the right because I have acquired this company. If we have a policy, the community is telling no, because we decided not to allow it. So that's the difference between having an internal procedure that is done by the staff, not the community, and having our policies that are done by the community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jody. I would consult with the co-chair in 10 seconds so that we'll take a decision on this policy. But I want to explain our decision on the previous policy, remote participation. Can you please go to the mic?
Sylvian Bayer, CM NOC, Cameroon. The DPP is in need for our region. I support its intent, but I want to know, has the author already addressed my concern raised via the email mentioned? So, via the email mentioned by staff. So, I'll just get to the email. Is it the page? Okay, perhaps I'll take the email direct to the author so he can make it.
Okay, comment from remote participation. Mina Noah from CCOM. The policy adds more complexity to what is already being done by AFRINIC staff. Arnaud from Togo, Togo Rare. In French, please, so you can put on your, that's it. Jody. Oh, yeah. Je ne supporte pas
Repeat the question, sir. Could you repeat the question, sir? We asked us to repeat the question. Please, in French, repeat in French, sir.
Je ne supporte pas cette politique du fait du process complexe.
Do not support this policy. It is a very complex process. It really demands hard working time for the AFRINIC staff.
Staff has confirmed that there is not a change, so there is not any additional workload or anything like that.
Thank you very much. This policy is, from what we have seen, this policy has not reached consensus, and we'll push it back to the mailing list. Regarding the policy we discussed earlier in the morning, we know that we have 3 different policies which are similar, and it would only be fair for us to wait until we have decisions on the other 2, or we've presented the other 2, then we can now come up with our decision. And that is what we're going to go with. Thank you. So we're going to move to the next item on the agenda, which is to present the next policy. So the next policy is the Internet Number Resource Review by AFRINIC, which is on version 8. The last version was submitted in June 2019, and the authors are Arnold, Jane Bapt. Sorry, 1 second. I think I'm making a mistake. Oh, sorry, Jody is this one. IPv inter-RI resource transfer by Jody.
I was thinking I lost track of the agenda. Okay. This proposal was sent for the first time about, I think, 1 year ago, maybe a little. So it's in version 3. I tried to address as much as possible the concerns of the community. So there are some very significant changes from the first version. I also tried to address the concerns that the staff provided during the first presentation and in the staff analysis. So I think right now is in a good shape. I am not going to repeat the arguments that have been provided already by the presentation earlier this morning about the transfers policy, because all them are the same. The basic change I am trying, compared to the previous presentation on this proposal, is I still believe we need to have need-based. Okay, so this is my major disagreement, as I already mentioned in the mic this morning, with the other policy proposal. The second important point I want to address is that, according to stats, the region that is providing more addresses is, okay? And AFRINIC has a specific wording in his policy that they only allow transfers which regions that have reciprocity. So I believe this proposal, well, I believe, I have verified which the staff in AFRINIC that this proposal is reciprocal, which I am not completely sure has been done by the other authors, and I don't think, at least one of them, I don't think is reciprocal. So if we accept a proposal that is not reciprocal, we are not fulfilling the mission we are trying to achieve, right? That's the important point. And the last point I want to make, and hopefully this avoid a lot of repetition of comments in the mic afterwards, or we skip lunch, that's the alternative, is intra-RIR transfers, which is what we have now, is not sufficient for a very single reason. There are not enough resources in the region, so one ISP now decides to provide the resources to another ISP. Why? They quit the business? How they do? So that's not sufficient for the region right now. As again, I said this morning, we really need something going on here. If you want to start deploying IPv6 and you want to keep connectivity with your other ISPs in the region and the rest of internet that are still using IPv4, you need, even if you deploy IPv6, you need a small number, at least, of IPv4 addresses, okay? If you don't have IPv4 addresses in 1 year from now, or probably before that, when we go to the next phase, how you do that? So we are talking about moving to IPv6, that's right, but how you want to do that if you don't have a minimum subset of addresses? The actual ISPs will be able to, but what about enterprises that joined internet as new end users? What about new ISPs? What about actual ISPs having more users? You cannot do that, okay? Even if you go to IPv6 only, as I explained it in my presentation on Tuesday, you need some addresses, for example, for the NAT64 box, okay? Or if you want to go to the carrier-grade NAT, which I don't think is the right way, but even if you want to go to carrier-grade NAT, you will need addresses now, and then you will get blocked by some services like Sony PlayStation, and you will need to shuffle those addresses and use another block, and another block, and another block. So actually it will be more expensive for you to go to carrier-grade NAT than to go to IPv6 and to use addresses that you buy in the market, okay? If AFRINIC cannot provide them anymore. So, in order to make it simple, what I tried to do is, instead of starting from scratch, I used the existing policy in the manual in section 5.7, which is meant for intra-RIR transfers, and I just modified it to match both cases, intra and inter. And again, as I did in other presentations, I am not going to read all the text. I will go straight to those points that are very relevant. So here we do some clarification about what is the source and what is the recipient. We expressly indicate in the proposal that we recognize two types of transfers, the ones that we already have, so within the region, and those that are from this region to other regions. That's the change that you can see in this slide, nothing different. Okay, so regarding the conditions of the transfer, I use as a base, again, for this proposal, almost the same that we have today, which is something that we already agreed a long time ago. Okay, update available. You can click that. Okay, so I think it's the other slide. I am lost now. I was in number 2. Yeah, here. So source must be validated. So that's respecting need basis. Of course, source need to be in good standing, etc., etc. We probably don't need to have that, but it's okay, okay? Because anyone to receive resources from AFRINIC should be in good standing. There should be compliance with all the procedures for membership and so on. That's everything normal. And what we are doing is changing here the timing for who can receive again resources, which today is 12 months, and I am moving that to 2 years, 24 months. Why? Because if you are providing resources that you have today in excess to another entity, you have already verified that you don't need more. So if you need more, it's probably because you are just doing business with addresses, and that's not justifying the need basis, okay? So if you make a mistake and you had excess of addresses and then your network grow, well, you got a lot of money from the addresses that you sell. So now buy it, don't get them from AFRINIC. Okay, I think it's natural. It's a kind of protection to avoid people looking into this just for business. Okay, so that's the thing here. The third point here is, well, it's always about the same. Let me don't get confused myself. Yeah, it's all is about the same, and again, it's the same that we have, but just changing from 12 months to 24 from the actual policy. Now, for the recipient, we have also similar conditions. We don't change that a lot, but we make sure that they comply with the same policies that were in the AFRINIC region. Sorry, they comply with the same policies for the justification of the need. So not any big change here. If the recipient is in another registry, it must follow the rules on that registry, okay? Not the rules in AFRINIC. So if you are in AFRINIC and the direction is incoming, you will follow the rules on AFRINIC. If the direction is outgoing, you will follow the rules on the destination registry. We have this already in the existing policy. If you transfer legacy resources, they are no longer being regarded as legacy. Now, because we are also transferring resources to other regions, we need to respect, to keep the reciprocity, what the other region is asking. So if resources are coming to AFRINIC, or if the resources are internal Africa to Africa, AFRINIC to AFRINIC, then they lose the legacy status. But if the resources are being sold, for example, to RIPE, which, if I correctly recall, is the only region that don't ask for losing the legacy status, then will not lose the legacy status. But in the other regions, they will lose it. Okay, so it's following the rules in the destination region. Okay. One of the comments from the staff was, what happened with ASN? I think it's normal that if you are transferring most of the resources, typically all the resources, you will transfer also the ASN, because probably this is some kind of a special merger and acquisition, probably, or something very close. Or maybe a company has a division that was doing all the IP stuff and is selling now to a company that will do for them, okay? So I think we should respect in that case that the ASN can also be transferred. Now, one of the points that had a long discussion in the list was, hey, we don't need this now. Okay, so let's make sure that this only starts counting when we reach the next phase. So we have a kind of first security belt, which is we will only use this if the staff is able to implement earlier, which I doubt, when we are already in the last phase. Now, my input on this is that...
Thank you, Jody. Your time is over. I don't know.
If we don't finish the presentation, it's impossible.
Please just conclude, make your last concluding remarks.
Go faster, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so The input I have from other regions is that generally they take minimum between 6 to 12 months to implement this. So I am almost sure, almost convinced that we will be in the next phase by them. There is publicity to make sure that there is transparency. This was also requested in the list. So I applied a special condition to make sure that we publish all the data. This is already done by AFRINIC, but let's clearly state it. And I think that's the last slide and the last security belt. People said, what happens if most of the transfers are going out of the region? We want to be protected about that. I don't think it's going to happen. Okay, I think according to the figures that we have right now is on the other way around, but this way, the staff automatically will suspend the policy. There is also special provision for even the board to do that in specific cases. We probably don't need this text, but the people, the community is more happy seeing it. Why we don't need this text? Because the board all time can suspend any policy when they discover something is not working as expected or is against the membership. So we probably don't need this. It happened recently in 18, but having the text in clear gives more confidence to the people of the community, I guess. Now, just quickly, if you look at the evolution of the transfers from, I think it's about 3 years ago, you will see how 18 is moving to more and more transfers to the other regions and never happens in the other direction, okay? And here you have also some stats that did 18 itself that demonstrate also this. And that's it, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jody.
Thank you, Jody. Sorry, before we take the staff assessment, Jody, I want to ask you a clear question.
Sorry, yeah.
You said earlier that you are ready to work with the other policy. Is there a possibility of we merging what you have here with the first policy that was proposed in the morning?
We have disagreements in several points, especially the no-need. And not just speaking for myself, but speaking from what I heard before, most of the people, or at least half and half, is not really clear. You will need to address that. Is not really, let's say, in agreement with the no-need. So this is a big discussion that we have. So I am not sure right now if it will make sense to merge both or still ask the community to decide on one or the other. It's difficult, I understand that.
It is very difficult, Jody, but authors of the first policy, Taiwan, Anthony, can we have you here? Is it possible you guys sit down together and work something out?
We have been sitting down several times.
So are you willing to support their policy?
I already stated this morning, and I am going to say it very clearly now. Again, implementing any transfers policy will take the staff for sure more than 9 months, probably around 1 year, okay? Unless they put a lot of additional human resources on it, of course. But it needs coordination with other registries, so it's not up to them only. So what I am suggesting is let's go for one and let's fix the details.
Okay, Jody, are you now saying let's go for one? Can we drop your policy at this point and say you work with them to refine their own policy and you bring it back?
I am not able to take that decision because this is a community decision, not my decision. When you are author of a proposal, you need to hear the people. And what I heard here is that not everybody agreed with the previous policy. So if I drop this policy and then the people in the last call opposed to the other one, we are lost. You understand my point?
Can we take this? Yeah. Can I also ask you guys the same question I have asked Jody? Why I was asking Jody that question earlier was because of his comment in the morning. So I want to ask you guys the same question. Are you willing to drop your policy and support Jody's policy?
I think we're willing to have one more seat. As I said, we have sat several times and we still have conflict. I think maybe we can have one more seat, but we'll drop our policy at this time because we would like the community to say one or two things.
Sorry, I want to ask Jody a question. What exactly is the problem with the no need? Because the only difference between our policy and yours, the only significant difference is the no need. And we understand that that justification is, it's relative, it depends on who and when. And it gives undue advantage to the bigger corporation who have funds and resources, who understand the policy, who, based on maybe past reputations and all that, can easily convince a couple of people sitting in the room to say, okay, yeah, this is the need, and it gets justified. What advantage does your policy give to smaller people who need resources? What advantage does it give a business who wants to expand to other regions, whom have transferred their resources there, and then due to growth, they need more? Okay.
Jody, excuse me. So we have comment from remote participation for the chairs. Sylvain Baya, chairs should not insist. That is not the PDP.
Chairs don't insist is not part of the PDP. That you should not try to convince anyone.
Yeah, but my job is to try and negotiate things and see. I think what we're going to do now is we're going to take the staff assessment and we now find out from the community if you still want to go ahead and make comments on Jody's proposal.
If you let me to answer the question again, I believe in need justification, and I think most of the people believe in that. Somebody said in the microphone before something very important. If you remove the need-based justification, you are allowing the one that can pay more money to get more resources, and that's really, really dangerous. So again, if the community supports much more one policy than the other, whatever is it that, I am happy to not to drop mine, but to declare no consensus. That's the job of the chairs. My suggestion, and I don't want to tell the chairs what to do, but my suggestion, if I am in their feet, is that if they believe there is no consensus, declare no consensus. If they believe there is consensus almost the same in several policies, send both of them to the last call, and the people should decide in the list explicitly responding to the question of if they support need or no need. I think that's a possibility. We have done this sometimes in ITF. When there is a conflicting point about two different topics, we go to the list to resolve that.
My question is how, sorry, please. Can we have the staff assessment, please?
Okay. Madhvi from AFRINIC regarding the staff impact assessment of the policy for IPv4 inter RIR transfers comprehensive scope. So our understanding of the proposal, nope, sorry, this is, no, wrong file, nope. No. No, it's not what I was seeing. Sorry, we have to fix this. Sorry about this. We're getting the latest file uploaded here.
Let's just be patient as we get the slides on. Thank you.
Okay, while the file is being uploaded, I'll just read it from my laptop, I think in the interest of time. So the proposal maintains the needs-based as a requirement, and there are no limit to the size of resources transferred. In the current CPM, there is a hold down period, so that is being taken out. And what the current policy is bringing in is that source entities will no longer be eligible to receive any further address allocations or assignments from AFRINIC. And the section 5723, the source entities must not have received a transfer, allocation, or assignment of V4 number resources from AFRINIC for 12 months prior to the approval of a transfer request.
This is version 2. The only change is the hold down period is now two years.
Okay, so we did this before you up. All right, okay. And the recipient must be a member of the relevant RIR, subject to its policies and legal documents and service agreements. Legacy resources will no longer be regarded as legacy in the case of intra-RIR transfers, and also in the case of inter-RIR transfers when incoming to the AFRINIC service region. Basically, if legacy resources are being transferred, legacy resources from another region are being transferred into AFRINIC, then they will lose the legacy status when being registered under the recipient in the AFRINIC region. There are provisions for ASN transfers only in cases of the majority of IPv4 from the source and other relevant policies are fulfilled. There was a threshold that you mentioned, Jordi, the majority threshold. Staff wanted to request a clarification for this. What does it exactly mean? And yeah, so the inter-RIR transfers will be triggered only once AFRINIC enters into exhaustion phase 2. And there shall be a transparency regarding the transfers. So each time a transfer is completed, the relevant non-confidential information will be automatically published in a specific web page, including the details that have been stated in the policy. Now, you want a specific web page, but what we do at the moment are the transfer logs. So that was a concern.
First, I respond to the majority thing. Majority for me is more than 50%. I think that's general understanding, right? I am happy to put 50% in the text. That's an editorial comment. Regarding the publicity, I am not asking for a new web page. What I want to make sure is that the policy text mandates that the information is published. That's it. How do you publish it? You are already having a log for that. So I am happy with that log.
Okay, in 5.781, the inter-RIR transfers will be suspended in case the number of outgoing IPv4 exceeds the incoming ones by 6 consecutive months. And then you say the staff can provisionally suspend any suspicious operation and request more information to all parties so the board can take a decision. Perhaps it would be great if you clarify this section.
The idea is we have got an extensive discussion about this on the list. One of the fears of the community is what happens is suddenly during a lot of time, not just one operation, we have all the addresses going out of Africa. So we want to make sure that we have explicit text to hold the transfers policy, okay? And we know, because that's part of the rules of the AFRINIC organization, we know that the board is able to do that at any time. But the community in the mailing list said we want to have it explicit, so I just make it explicit. At the end, we are not changing the rules that we have, because the board can always take a decision about we need to suspend this part of the policy manual, right? I mentioned it before. It happened recently in IRIN. It can happen in any registry. The board is always able to protect the membership, the organization, to suspend any policy. So if something gets broken, either the staff could tell the board, hey, something is happening, or even the membership can tell the board, look, we are getting all our resources out of the region. We need to verify if this is right or not, and meanwhile, we can suspend it.
Okay, in this case, based on the clarification, then we need to have a monitoring mechanism for the number of resources being transferred in and out, and also the mechanism for how we staff can when staff can suspend, okay, and when the AFRINIC board needs to be considered, or needs to make a call.
Well, the mechanism is there because you are doing statistics of everything what is happening always, right? So it's really easy to even automate it if necessary.
Okay, your clarifications are noted, Jordi. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we now, let's proceed to opening of the mic. I will accept the first 4 people. And then if we still have time, we can take others. Please, let us use 1 minute for each. And please state your name and be on the point whether you're supporting, and be clear the reasons you're supporting or not supporting. Thank you very much. We are taking the first 4. And so the ladies out there, please mark out the first 2 people, the first line, and the first 2, the last line. Okay, let's start. Okay, let's start.
Okay, thank you. Haitham Nakhal, Egypt. I am not against any transfer policy, whether the one presented now or the one in the morning, but I am not supporting any transfer policy now until we finish our last /8. So I'm not supporting any transfer policy now. Thank you.
The next at the back. Back of the mic, please.
Thank you. I'm Sharon from Uganda. I'm standing here to oppose the policy.
Coach, can you please switch off your microphone, please, Coach?
Extra procedures involved, and I don't know how it will help the community if the transfer procedures are not clearly defined. Thank you.
All right. We in front.
This Pascal. Jody, if I get your policy correctly, are ASNs also transferred along with the resources? Yeah, for me, I'm not comfortable with that because I think if the ASNs are being transferred with the resources, they should operational use, and the actual infrastructure should be transferred as well. And regarding staff reporting suspicious transactions directly to the board and the board taking a decision, I don't think I am comfortable with that. So for now, I'm not supporting this policy. Thank you.
Thank you. Next person at the back.
This is Alain Ayina. I want to comment again on what Professor Nee said this morning about Jody. Jody, if you want to promote your policy, just promote your policy. Since in the morning you'll be saying, oh, don't support one of these 2, don't support the 3rd one. Why? Why do you want to say my tomatoes is not good because yours? No, let the people to taste mine. But you are saying, please don't do that. Please don't do that. And I also just want to, all of us to make sure that saying that the board can suspend policy anytime, we need to be careful. If is something is broken, board may act. But if saying that, oh, numbers are moving more than with that, this, I don't think this would be a justification for a board to act. We should be careful.
Thank you. Jody, you can please respond to the first four people. Thank you.
Yeah. The question of the ASN, I already explained it before. The idea is that the staff requested that in the previous staff analysis because they see that sometimes is necessary. So I was checking in the mailing list. It's not just my decision. I just editing what the mailing list is telling me. And the mailing list was telling us that, yeah, in some cases it seems logic to get the transfer together with the ISN. And as a kind of guideline, I put majority. So it makes sense that if you are transferring most of the resources, maybe you get also the ASN.
We have a comment from staff.
Jody, you mentioned staff.
Okay.
The thing, when staff report on the implementation of policies, what we report on is what the members went through. Okay, so we don't try to lead changes, but we try and point out what were the pain points that the members, went through because they wanted to transfer an ASN, but we have to tell them the policy does not allow for it. Okay.
Let me to rephrase it to be clear. You're totally right. The staff suggested that the community is asking for that. And when I was checking in the mailing list, the people was saying, yes, we should do that. Okay. I think that's much clearer and not asking the staff to be the guilty for that text, not at all. The staff is heading the community and I am also heading the staff and the community. Okay, so that's the point. The other point was, again, the decision on the staff and the boards. Two people commented about the same. This is something that happens today. I mean, the community asked me to put explicit text on that. I didn't have this text in the previous version, but the community told me we want a security belt. We want several security belts. I did that.
Thank you so much. I'll take the next four people. And let's begin with the first two at front and then the next two at the back. Thank you. So you can begin.
C'est Gaylor Binemo de la RDC.
I'm from DRC. I do not support this policy because I do not understand. I would like to ask Jody, how can you test? How can you prove? How will it be of benefit for the community? There are a lot of limitation in the process of transfer, so I do not support it.
Next, please. Daniel.
Thank you, Daniel from Nigeria. Jody, I want to ask, what will the future look like for AFRINIC when our IPv4 IP addresses have expired and have exhausted? I want to see the scenario of what is the role of AFRINIC. How will AFRINIC evolve in terms of the resources that we have? And for those that have already exhausted, what is their role now in terms of managing the resources? Why I'm asking this question is I really want to understand, because rightly, as you said, I see a situation whereby the inter-RRI will be more effective when the resources are not available, or the leftover of resources are not available here in Africa. So that we remove the fears of what is the responsibility of the structure of AFRINIC as at then, because I prefer to look at the future quickly. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The next two people at the back, please, let's make four people.
You mean if we don't approve this policy? A scenario when if we don't approve the policy, or if we go to this policy? Okay, both sides.
All right.
Okay.
The next two people.
The point was the benefit, and actually that's responding to both scenarios, is if we only keep intra-RIR transfers, as the networks grow in Africa, as the number of users grow in Africa, there will be people that will not be able to connect. They will be able to connect with IPv6 only, but without transition. And this means that they will be disconnected for many services and applications that still are not available with IPv6. And that may be a disconnection for not just 1 year or 2 years. It may take the rest of the world 5 years to have everything, I mean 100% with IPv6, probably even more than that. Okay, so I think that gives you the picture of both the scenarios.
Thank you, Jody. I want to encourage you to take some notes. We are having the next two people at the back. After the next two people, then you can respond to them. Thank you. Dr. Ni?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'd like to ask Jody, what policy exactly is he proposing? Is he proposing a policy for creating a market, or he's proposing an inter-Arab transfer policy? Because if you look at the problem statement, for me, problem statement is very important. It clarifies the intent. The objective of the policy is clarified by the problem statement. And if you read it carefully, it has a section that says, proposal allows establishing a mechanism to allow transfers of V4 resources to and from the region, and to align AFRINIC with a market that already exists. So is this a market, policy to establish a market? If it already exists, are we to now establish a good one according to some new rules, or you are trying to cater for IP transfers? We have to be clear, because this is suggesting that you want us to go into a market situation. Whereas I don't believe we have yet adopted transfer. Second point, I think this filter at will is something that is not good. Okay, this business of determining suddenly, you are pushing me away. This method of ad hoc deciding when to, suspend a policy and so on is not good. Let's leave that to the board to determine. And lastly, I'd like to echo my question to the chair that please ask Jody to withdraw those statements about another proposal, which has yet to be heard. Thank you.
Thank you. The next person, please, at the back.
Thank you very much. I have two questions, and one is actually a comment. I can see that we are having issues of multiple proposals trying to address same problem, which is, of course, adaptation issues that we had discussed yesterday. We have to also think of the possibility of trying to work towards minimizing such kind of issues. Else, in the next meeting, we may have maybe 10 proposals trying to sort the same problem. Now, coming back to this current proposal, Jody, actually you have made one authoritative statement that you are absolutely sure that this proposal will allow unidirectional flow of the resources to the Africa in past, because you mentioned that like several times that we are more to benefit from it than other regions. So I want to know, what is your confidence level, and do you have numbers, projections, probabilities that will give the assurance? Because most of the members of the communities, everyone want to say, okay, we want policies for the development of Africa, okay? We don't want to think about other regions for the meantime. This is what we are concerned. So
thank you.
The fear is about the exploitation, okay? So what is your confidence level, please?
Thank you, Jody. I think you can respond, but also maybe talk about the statements, clarify them.
Yeah, there was, I take notes on 3 points, basically. The first one is the problem statement. Well, I think the problem statement is clear because it's the same for all the 3 policy proposals that we have in the table. So there is no doubt on it. What I don't work for any broker. I rejected commissions from them, so I can state clearly, and some of them are here in the room and can state that. So I have a very neutral position. I don't sell addresses. I don't list addresses. I don't do anything like that, and I don't want to be involved in that. Okay. Further to that, when the transfers policies started to be discussed in other regions, I was always stating I was against that, very clearly. But when this has been approved by the communities in other regions, I don't want to see any region in disadvantage. That's my point. You trust what I am saying or not, but I am telling the truth. Second, the lack of cooperation that I stated this morning, chairs can confirm, staff can confirm, the other authors can confirm, because we exchanged emails to try to meet with the other authors to organize a Skype, to organize something, and they never responded. So I cannot withdraw that because it's true, okay? Simple like that. And the last question, I am not sure to understand what do you mean with unidirectional. What I tried to say, and I have a slide showing it, is that if you look at the evolution of all the transfers since 2 or 3 years ago, what it happened all the time is that most of the transfers by millions versus few thousands is aiding to other regions, not in the other way around. I have a confidence, let's say 99%, that it will be the same if Africa joins this situation, because it don't make any sense it's going to change. Why? Because ARIN had the major number of legacy resources. ARIN is the region that has more IPv6 deployment. So clearly, they don't have any more benefit in getting IPv4 addresses. Their benefit is in selling them, actually, not in keeping them. That's my perspective.
Thank you so much. I think in the interest of time, unless you have something totally different from what we've already had.
Anthony from Nigeria. Jody, our policies are similar, but I just want to say something about your policy. We both agree in one thing, that there is need for this, urgent need for this. But one thing is, your policy doesn't...
The mic is closed. Please, if no one should be joining the mic. Thank you. I'm sorry for interrupting.
Okay. The text in your policy seem not to show that. I think you're being a bit cautious because you want it to pass through, which is good. But then I'm asking, doesn't it introduce more strain on the AFRINIC staff and the board, since you have to, you're telling the board, oh, if we try it and it doesn't work, we'll pull it out. It doesn't show that 1% doubt you said you have. And I still think the no need is very important. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll take the mic at the back. Please, please, and please, let us be fast.
Okay, Luca from Nigeria. You talked so much about reciprocity. For something to be reciprocal, there has to be an equal movement from one place to the other. I give to you 10, you give back 10 to me. But what this policy is trying to do is to open the market, I say. And then if that is the case, then bringing a need, this in justification into reciprocity, or bringing them together doesn't really make any sense, because if truly you are talking about reciprocity, you are talking about a situation where there is a quid pro quo. I give you, assuming we have, let's say, 500,000, and then we give to a particular region the 500,000, or we transfer, they should be able to transfer 500. Anything above 500, you understand? It doesn't really reciprocate, kind of, you understand? So that there is a problem with that, in the sense that anybody can just wake up after making a policy that, okay, there is an inter-transfer. Tomorrow I can wake up and say that, okay, let's change our policy. It shouldn't be inter again. We go back to intra. You understand? You've collected so much from somebody and then you shut your door to it. You understand? So there is actually an issue there. But if you remove the need, I believe it will create a free flow of the resources. You don't really have to stick to the whole reciprocity anymore. It has to be. Then secondly, you talked about 24 months period. That's for a source to be able to come back and get another one if they need. Now, if I have a need, I can decide to bring up another entity and have it go get the...
I'm sorry, we just have to let you stop.
The resources. So I think there is a flaw there. Reduce the time period.
Please respect other speakers.
I think there is a misunderstanding of what means reciprocity in the terms of these policies. What the ARIN policy says is that the justification of the policies are reciprocal, not that you send the same resources in and out, just that they are compatible, that AFRINIC is requesting the same as they are requesting, so they are not in conflict.
Right, I'll take the next two people at the front.
C'est Monsieur Laurent Toumba, ISPAC.
Votre position est complètement floue. Estamos a nos arriscar e nos perder.
We are trying to lose. The morning we were clear. The issue of transfers in the other region we don't want. Please, can you withdraw this proposal because it will cause more conflict? We do not see any need for this proposal.
We are stopping our mic from the speaker.
My problem is with the 6-month window that we gave. I think based on what we have now, 20% of the AFRINIC members have 80% of the resources. And if those 20% within the 6 months actually moved all the resources out of the region, it will really have a huge impact. So instead of giving it a timeline, why not give it in terms of resources? When you see percentage of resources going out of the region, within certain period of time, then of course the board can act. But for me, I'm against this policy because right now, if we go ahead with this policy, clearly that will create ways and avenues where people will go into black market by just registering these resources immediately, so that by the time we open up the inter-regional transfer, they'll be able to sell it. So we shouldn't create such scenarios. The AFRINIC total members is just 1,800 or less than that. Can't we do what is called shadow testing in business and ask those members via a survey, do they need this policy of inter-regional transfer, and ask them questions directly because they are the owners of these resources. Thank you.
Thank you. And I will allow Judy to respond to those. And please take note, we have closed further submissions. Thank you. So you can take your seats if you're on the mic. Thank you.
I would love to have a survey with the members, but that's not part of the PDP. Now, what I will suggest is those members responding the survey to respond in the PDP mailing list. That will help all the authors of any policy proposal, not just this one. The problem we have most of the time with the PDP, and again, not speaking just for this policy proposal, is that we come to a discussion in the list for during 1 year, and here we hear new voices that could have said that in the mailing list, and then we come here to celebrate that we have an agreement. But this is not happening.
Thank you very much. I think we are moving to the next. And at this point, I would like to invite the presenter. Jody, you can take your seat, please. Thank you so much. Please take your seat. Jody, I understand you the presenter of the next. I'm sure you're aware of that. But right now, we're going to go through it. Thank you very much. We have someone online who's going to be presenting. The change is impact analysis is mandatory. Can we see something reversed here on the screen if you can help us? This modifies CPM 3.0 to make staff impact